Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtathara Shishimari Divine Grace Abhaitan Aravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hare Hare Bo Namo Vishnu 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 Sorry, he actually had the right verse on the board. It's 31. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Okay, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter number 2, Remembrance of Lord Krishna, text number 31. Vipanan Vishapanena Vipanan Vishapanena Nighya Bhuja Gav Adipam Nighya Bhujagadipam Uttapya Payayadgavas Uttapya Payayadgavas Tattoyam Prakatistitam Tattoyam Prakatistitam Vipanan Vishapanena Nighya Bhujagapa Adipam Uttapya Yapayadgavas Tattoyam Prakatistitam Vipanan Vishapanena Nighya Bhujagadipam Uttapya Payayadgavas Tattoyam Prakatistitam Panan Paishapanena Nigra Bujaki Padipam Yapayayad Kavas Tattoyam Prakatishtitam Vipanan Vishapanena Nirya Bhujagadipam Tattoyam Prakatishtitam Vipanan Vishapanena Nirya Bhujagadipam Utapya Payayad Gavas Tattoyam Prakatishtitam. Word for word, Vipanan, perplexed in great difficulties. Vishapanena, by drinking poison. Nigrya, subduing. Bhujaga Adipam, the chief of the reptiles. Utapya, after coming out. Apayayad, caused to drink. Gavaha, the cows. Tat, that. Toyam, water. Prakriti, natural. Stitam, situated. Translation by His Divine Grace Abhayachan Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The inhabitants of Vrindavana were perplexed by great difficulties because a certain portion of the Yamuna was poisoned by the chief of the reptiles, Kaliya. The Lord chastised the snake king within the water and drove him away. And after coming out of the river, he caused the cows to drink the water and proved that the water was again in its natural state. There's no purport, so I'll go to text number 32. Ayajayat Gosavena Goparajam Dvijotamai Vitasya Chorubharasya Chikirsan Sadvyayam Vibhuhu. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Lord Krishna desired to utilize the opulent financial strength of Maharaj Nanda for worship of the cows, and also he wanted to give a lesson to Indra, the king of heaven. And thus he advised his father to perform worship of Go, or the pasturing land, and the cows, with the help of learned brahmanas. Purport. Since he is the teacher of everyone, the Lord also taught his father Nanda Maharaj. Nanda Maharaj was a well-to-do landholder and owner of many cows. And as was the custom, he used to perform yearly worship of Indra, the king of heaven, with great opulence. This worship of demigods by the general populace is also advised in the Vedic literature, just so people can accept the superior power of the Lord. The demigods are servants of the Lord, deputed to look after the management of various activities of universal affairs. Therefore, it is advised in the Vedic scriptures that one should perform yagyas to appease the demigods. But one who is devoted to the Supreme Lord has no need to appease the demigods. Worship of the demigods by common people is an arrangement for acknowledging the supremacy of the Supreme Lord, but it is not necessary. Such appeasement is generally recommended for material gains only. As we have already discussed in the second canto of this literature, one who admits the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not need to worship the secondary demigods. Sometimes being worshipped and adored by less intelligent living beings, the demigods become puffed up with power and forget the supremacy of the Lord. This happened when Lord Krishna was present in the universe, and thus the Lord wanted to give a lesson to the king of heaven, Indra. He therefore asked Maharaj Nanda to stop the sacrifice offered to Indra and to use the money properly by performing a ceremony, worshipping the cows and the pasturing grounds on the hill of Govardhan. By this act, Lord Krishna taught human society, as he has instructed in Bhagavad Gita also, that one should worship the Supreme Lord by all acts and by all their results. That will bring about the desired success. The Vaishyas are specifically advised to give protection to the cows and their pasturing ground or agricultural land instead of squandering their hard-earned money. That will satisfy the Lord. The perfection of one's occupational duty, whether in the sphere of duty to oneself, one's community, or one's nation, is judged by the degree to which the Lord is satisfied. Translation for 31 and 32. The inhabitants of Vrindavana were perplexed by great difficulties because a certain portion of the Yamuna was poisoned by the chief of the reptiles, Kaliya. The Lord chastised the snake king within the water and drove him away. And after coming out of the river, he caused the cows to drink the water and proved that the water was again in its natural state. The Supreme Lord Krishna desired to utilize the opulent financial strength of Maharaj Nanda for worship of the cows. And also he wanted to give a lesson to Indra, the king of heaven. Thus he advised his father to perform worship of Go, or the pasturing land and the cows, with the help of learned brahmanas. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay, so this is Uddhava speaking to Vidura, and Uddhava now in his ecstatic state of consciousness is trying to remember the Lord as much as possible through the pastimes of the Lord. And we previously saw how he talked about Dwarka and how the Lord's contradictions provide a specific ecstatic emotion which is actually quite relishable and enjoyable and full of bliss, but from our mundane perspective feels like pain. So although it's mentioned as pain, it's not the pain that we understand in the material world. Rather, it is of a spiritual nature, of a different type of enjoyment, remembering Krishna in separation. Sorry, can I get you to sit on the side? Thank you. So here, in today's shloka, we're reading about how the Lord performed his pastimes in subduing Kaliya. So, previous one talks about how Mrigang spoke about how the different demons were sent by Kamsa to Vrindavan to kill Krishna. But Krishna, because of his omnipotence and his state as being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, easily killed them as a child breaks dolls. And in this particular verse, it's talking about Kaliya. He didn't really kill Kaliya, rather he subdued Kaliya. As we know, the pastime of how Kaliya entered this particular lake of Vrindavan. Although it's part of Yamuna, it's mentioned that it's a particular lake that was separated from the general flow of Yamuna. That's why the rest of Yamuna wasn't poisoned. Rather, only this lake known as Kaliya Hrada. And this particular lake was the abode of Kaliya, the king of or the chief of the reptiles. And it's quite interesting that he was originally chased away from his home by Garuda, and he took shelter of that particular lake because Garuda was cursed not to enter there. So Kaliya then, using his mystic potencies, Jalastamba, it's mentioned, he started to create his own city within the water. Jalastamba is the mystic potency that allows one to create a physical hard object out of water, a solid object out of water. So he had made his own underwater city, and he, due to his poisonous and envious nature, had begun to poison the whole lake. So what had happened was that one particular point in time, the cowherd boys decided to go, and the cows themselves decided to take water from that particular lake. And unknowingly, they drank the water and passed out on the verge of, practically dead, on the verge of death. And when Krishna came and glanced over them, they immediately regained consciousness. And Krishna understood what was happening. In that particular point in time, Yogamaya had arranged that Krishna's Chit Sakti, his ability to understand what's happening. Because if you see a couple of days ago or a year ago, when Aghasura had appeared in Vrindavan, Yogamaya had, by the instruction of the Lord, covered him so that he couldn't understand what was happening. That my cowherd friends are going inside this demon's mouth. What should I do? What will happen to them? They will die. Whereas in this particular point, in this lila of Kaliya Dhamana, here Krishna knows exactly what needs to be done. And Krishna immediately jumps and climbs onto a particular tree. And this particular Kalpavriksha tree, although all of the other vegetation and plants and animal life around the lake had all passed away due to the poisonous effect of Kaliya's presence, this particular tree had remained alive, waiting to assist the Lord in this particular pastimes. I've heard that in a previous age, a previous time, when Garuda happened to steal the pot of nectar, the Amrit from the demigods, as he was traveling a particular place in Vrindavan where this tree was, a drop of that nectar fell on this tree. And that's the reason why that tree continued to stay there on the side or the shore of that particular lake. And so when Krishna climbed on that tree, then he displayed his artistic and chivalrous nature by adjusting his belt, adjusting his hair, and slapping his arms, ready to jump into the water. And immediately jumps into the water. And Krishna is very expert in teaching us the important lesson of how to remain humble and understand our position as part and parcel of the Lord. Because in the Prabhupada mentions today, he says that since he is the teacher of everyone, the Lord also taught his father, Nanda Maharaj. So what to speak of his father? What to speak of Kaliya? He even taught his father, who is a pure devotee. So just to teach Kaliya a lesson, Sri Krishna jumped into the lake and he started to swim and he started to make noise. Actually, his swimming was very sweet. Those who heard his swimming under the water felt like very sweet music. But the problem was that Kaliya wasn't of the right mentality. He simply saw that as a nuisance. He heard this loud sound sitting on his throne and he got very upset and he decided to come out and find out what's happening. So then he came and attacked Krishna. Even before understanding who Krishna was and what's happening, out of his extreme envy, he was unable to actually assess the situation cool-headedly. He immediately grabbed the Lord and beat him in the chest. And as soon as he beat him in the chest, he started to coil around the Lord. And he took him out of the water. And the cowherd boys and the cows and the other animals of Braja and all the cowherd men who happened to be in the vicinity, they heard these particular cowherd boys and cows' cries. And seeing Krishna within the coils of the snake, they started lamenting very much. And then they came to the point of fainting due to extreme lamentation, due to the separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the rest of Braja, they started feeling ominous symptoms. And seeing these very misfortunate symptoms, they began to run, trying to trace Krishna where he had gone. Because for them, the life and soul was Krishna. So if anything bad was to happen, it wasn't bad for them. It was something bad was going to happen to Krishna. Because Krishna was their life and soul. Sukadeva Goswami explains that when Parikshit Maharaj asks Sukadeva Goswami, how is it that the residents of Braja, they started feeling more affection for their own sons at the particular point in time when Krishna had manifested himself as their sons during the Brahma Vimohana Lila. How is it that they displayed so much more affection to Krishna than their own sons? How is it possible? Because if you think about it, in the material world, generally one has more affection for one's swajana, one's own family members, more than the others. That's why Prabhupada says the closest thing to experiencing of love is the mother's love for the child, because the mother has so much affection for the child, but she doesn't have that much affection for any other child. So how is it that these residents of Vraja had so much affection for Krishna, who wasn't their child? Mother Yashoda's child. Then Sukadeva Goswami explains that actually just as the body is very dear to the self, the soul, similarly for the soul, the super soul is the most dear. And Krishna is the super soul. So for them, taking great pleasure and showing much affection for their children who are Krishna, then that is not very astonishing, because it's a natural sequence of events to be more affectionate to Krishna than one's own children. So here, seeing that there are bad symptoms, bad signs happening, they all traced Krishna's lotus feet. Because in Vrindavan, no one erases the Lord's lotus footprints. They always are maintained and worshipped by all the residents of Braja. So as Krishna walked through the forest, his lotus footprints would always be imprinted everywhere. And following these footprints into the Yamuna, they found Krishna coiled or wrapped up in the coils of Kaliya. So, as the Leela goes, then Krishna, he manifested this pastime just to increase the loving sentiments of the residents of Vrindavan, just so that their love and affection for him would increase more and more. That was his benediction for them. Part of his pastimes was to parichanaya sadhanam, to save the devotees. And saving the devotees, he decided to save them by giving them more of him, more of his pastimes, more affection for him, so that they would not be entangled in this material world. Of course, they're nitya siddhas, they won't be entangled in this material world. But for us, he is teaching us how to relish through the Brajavasis the pastimes of the Lord. So, as Krishna sees that it's coming to a point where everyone is slowly losing consciousness, losing their minds, he decides to then begin his chastisement of Kaliya. So we know he jumped on the hoods of Kaliya and he started to dance on the hoods of Kaliya. The Gandharvas, the Siddhas, the Charnas, the Kinnaras, the Apsaras, they came out and they started to play instruments and dance along with the Lord's dancing. And so the Lord continued to dance. And again, the dancing of the Lord appeared to be very sweet, very gentle for those who were observing the Lord. But for Kaliya, what did it feel like? It felt like hard blows on the head. You know, when you hit your head on something, it's like for a second you become like a bit bewildered and disoriented. For Kaliya, at every single moment, to the extent that you hit your head and fall into a concussion, for Kaliya it was like that. Every single head, he had 10,000 hoods, of them 101 prominent, and all of those hoods were getting smashed. They were being broken. And Kaliya, despite being that broken state, he was still trying to snap at the Lord with his many hoods. So the Lord continued to dance, being unaffected. So the Lord is Daksha, he's very, very expert. If you think about it, first of all, it's a snake's head, it's very slippery. Second, it's moving. And third, it's trying to attack you. And fourth, you've got so many heads, you got to perform a certain routine. But the Lord was unaffected by any of those things. As if he was dancing on normal ground, he was dancing on the head of Kaliya and being completely unaffected. So praising the Lord's dancing, then all the demigods appeared. And that's why they started to throw flowers and dance and sing and play instruments for the Lord's pleasure. And at a particular point in time, the Lord had smashed Kaliya to the extent that his poison had run out and blood started to flow. And then when Kaliya understood what was happening, then he saw the Lord and he understood that this is the Parama Purusha. Because the only other person that could give me so much pain is Garuda. But Garuda's pain is not this, the pain Garuda gives is not as strong as this. This is so much more than Garuda's pain. This is unbelievably, so many unlimited times stronger than the pain Garuda gives by him flapping his wing. Because previously what had happened was that when the snakes, the Nagas, were offering sacrifice for Garuda once a month, then at that particular point in time, Kaliya, being very envious and jealous and proud, he started eating that offering himself. And when Garuda came to find out, Garuda came and immediately attacked Kaliya. And Kaliya started to snap at him with his mouths and poison and show poison. But it's mentioned that Garuda, simply with his wing, he slapped Kaliya. And Kaliya, feeling great pain, he left that Nagalaya. He left that particular place of the Nagas, being, pushed away by Garuda. So he has already experienced what it's like being slapped by Garuda's wings. Now he's experiencing the master of Garuda, the Parama Purusha. So seeing that, he understood that yes, so this is the master of Garuda. And who's the master of Garuda? That's Lord Vishnu. So he understood that Parama Purusha now is standing on my head and dancing. And seeing that slight change in consciousness, then the Nagapatnis, the wives of Kaliya, who had originally abandoned him in one sense, saying that let him die, let this foolish creature die. No matter how many times we preach to him, he's not listening, he's still showing so much envy, let's give up on him. But the nature of devotee is that they always take the opportunity to be able to make others more Krishna conscious. So despite having to experience so much pain in preaching, in trying to make another person a devotee, they have so much tolerance that they're ready, that at that particular point in time when there's a change of consciousness, they're ready to deliver Krishna consciousness to that person. So when this particular Kaliya decided to change his consciousness, because it is a decision to change, because originally us coming to the material world was a decision, we chose to be ignorant. So the solution to that is to actually turn one's face to Krishna, because Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hai Andakar, that Krishna is like the sun and Maya is like darkness. Wherever Krishna is, Maya cannot exist, because where there is sun, the darkness cannot exist. So by turning your face to Krishna, it's a step forward towards Krishna. Like Prabhupada says, every time you distribute Krishna book, it's one step forward towards Krishna. So this Kaliya decided to take that step forward, and the Nagapatni, seeing that, immediately came and started to pray to the Lord and try to pacify him so that he would let go of Kaliya. And Kaliya's position was such that he was so smashed that his original sort of masculine pride was so smashed. You can understand that Kaliya came to his original position as a infinitesimal spark, the spirit soul, that he understood the position of his wives, and he simply just repeated their prayers because of his lack of knowledge of the Lord's omnipotence and opulence. So he just simply repeated the Nagapatni's prayers. And it's mentioned in Krishnadas Kaviraj's prayer, Jai Radha, Jai Krishna, Jai Jai Vrindavan. There's a particular stanza where it's mentioned that he's glorifying the Dvija Patnis, he's glorifying the wives of Kaliya, because they achieved Krishna's lotus feet simply by their devotion. They achieved Krishna's lotus feet simply by his devotion. Govinda Charan. That's the elevated position of the Nagapatnis. They were such pure devotees. By their, association, and by their mercy, Kaliya also became a devotee. So the Lord, he chastised Kaliya, the snake king within the water, and drove him away. And just a little detail also, it's mentioned by the Acharyas that this is the point in time where Krishna receives his Kaustubha jewel, his Kaustubha money. Kaustubha money is his eternal jewel that he always wears. But in this particular pastime, what happens is that he chooses to somehow or other arranged in such a way that it had entered into the treasury of Kaliya. So the Nagapatnis, they brought everything that Kaliya owned just to offer it to the Lord. And so they decorated the Lord. So when the Lord came out of the water, he was completely decorated. with all ornaments and the Kaustubha money. And all the residents of Braja, they came back to life. And they immediately went and embraced him. And it's mentioned that Balaram, he knew the whole situation, and he smiled and he was laughing, understanding the situation, thinking that here, I am Seshanag, I am the bedstead of the Lord, but the Lord doesn't play with me, but here he is playing with Kaliya, an insignificant serpent. In Chaitanya Lila, you also see the same thing. When baby Nimai, he sees a snake, and he starts to crawl, and he starts playing with that snake. And he plays with the snake, and the snake coils around the Lord, and then finally the snake coils into such a way that the Lord's lying on the snake. Just like the Mahavishnu lies on Seshanag. And seeing this, Sachimata becomes and Jagannath Mishra become immediately anxious and afraid, and they come running out. And as soon as they come running out, then the snake immediately leaves Mahaprabhu and immediately goes into the forest. And it's mentioned that actually the Lord wanted to perform that particular pastime. So Lord Balaram incarnated as that snake and immediately appeared to play with the Lord. So you can see in Krishna, he enjoys that pastime, and he chose to award Kaliya, an insignificant servant, that pastime of playing with him. In fact, later on it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, in the purports, it's mentioned that Kaliya, instead of Akrura coming and picking up Krishna and taking him to Mathura, sometimes the Lord chose to ride on Kaliya and go through the Yamuna to get to Mathura. So this is Kaliya's fortunate position. The Lord chastised Kaliya, he didn't kill him. So the specific mercy was bestowed upon Kaliya in this way. And he taught the world about this nature of envy and pride. Now, the next particular pastime that Uddhava chooses to remember is Govardhan Puja. The particular section where Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men and women were preparing for Indra Yagya. And so Krishna appeared on the scene and he asked Nanda Maharaj, what's happening? What are you guys doing? And Nanda Maharaj said, you're a small boy, you don't know. We've arranged for Indra Yagya. He's giving us rain, so therefore every year we perform this Yagya to pacify him and make sure that our crops grow and that there's enough for our animals and us to drink. So then, in this particular section, Krishna decides to change the equation. Krishna can perform so many things with one act. He glorified Govardhan. He taught everyone how worship of the demigods is inferior, is not required, and all one needs to worship is himself. And second and third of the many things that we don't know of, obviously, third is that he wanted to subjugate Indra's pride. Because Indra, being the king of heaven, is supposed to set an example as a devotee of the Lord. But here the Lord understood that Indra had become proud, unnecessarily taking up all the benefits of the sacrifices and thinking himself to be actually supreme. But actually, if you have a look in every yagya, the first offering is to Lord Vishnu, and the remnants are then divided and separated to all the other demigods. But Indra forgot that, and so Krishna wanted to show through this pastime how even devotees of Indra's caliber can fall down very easily. Because Indra's nature is that demigods are worshipping the Lord. They are devotees of the Lord. But the problem is that they're also attached to material enjoyment. So Prabhupada often says that spiritual advancement and material sense gratification go very ill together. It's very bad combination. It just simply produces more and more misery, because you're trying to go towards Krishna and trying to get rid of all contamination, but when you're trying to endeavor for material sense gratification, you're bringing up more and more contamination in the consciousness. So it just doesn't work. Prabhupada often refers to this as cooking with smoke. That what can you achieve by cooking with smoke? Yes, there's a little bit of heat, maybe, years and down the track you may be able to cook something, luckily, hopefully, possibly not. But with fire, then the cooking can be done. So similarly, Prabhupada mentions that there's wet wood and dry wood. when we take to Krishna consciousness, immediately the flame starts, ignited and there's a fire. That's because it's dry wood. But the more and more we perform sense gratification, the more and more we douse that wood with water. And it will take even longer to then relight that fire. Because you need to first dry the wood and then you need to ignite it. So this idea of performing devotional service and on the side having one's own sense gratification is not a very good proposal. It's actually a half-hearted approach towards worshipping the Lord. If one wants to advance in devotional service, then you can see how much am I keeping to myself and how much am I giving to Krishna. Prabhupada's father used to always say, if Krishna wants to give you something, he has 10 hands. How much can you hold? And if Krishna wants to take away something, he has 10 hands. What can you hold away from him? What can you not give? So the Lord will take away what is unnecessary for devotional service. And he will give what is required for devotional service. So, Krishna wanted to teach Indra in this way. And the Prabhupada specifically talking about demigod worship and how Krishna wanted to show that it's not required. If you're worshipping Krishna himself, demigod worship is already included there, because Krishna is the supreme benefactor of all sacrifices. Because in the Vedas, worship of the demigods is just a progressive step towards actually worshipping the Lord in pure devotional service. So the goal is to worship the Lord. In fact, in demigod worship, you're supposed to worship Krishna first, Vishnu. All yagas require that principle there. That Vishnu is first worshipped and then the demigod that you want to appropriate. So, Prabhupada says, as discussed in the second canto of this literature, one who admits the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not need to worship the secondary demigods. Sometimes being worshipped and adored by less intelligent living beings, the demigods become puffed up with power and forget the supremacy of the Lord. This happened when Lord Krishna was present in the universe, and thus the Lord wanted to give a lesson to the King of Heaven, Indra. In fact, again, I always try to remember this point, that Indra's a devotee, Indra's been given a position, Indra's attached, Indra's very much dear to the Lord, because it's mentioned that Indriyari Vakulam Loka Mridyanti Yuge Yuge. For the enemies of Lord Indra, Krishna appears to defend and to protect Indra, to kill those particular demons. But it is this Indra in Krishna Lila, if you actually read, not only in Govardhan Puja, after being sufficiently chastised, later on, when Krishna takes the Parijata tree, which actually belongs to him, Indra comes and fights the Lord. Hey, what are you doing? It's my tree. Nothing leaves this place without my permission. So you can understand the nature of the material world. It is forgetfulness. Therefore, we need to always stay in the association of devotees. Now, finally, the final point here Prabhupada's mentioning is that one should perform one's duty by offering whatever one has for the Lord's worship, for His pleasure. So, for Nanda Maharaj, he's a Vaishya. So, he should engage his wealth that he gets from performing agricultural work and serving the cows in serving the Lord, not in extravagant things. When prior to Mahaprabhu's appearance, Gaur Purnima is tomorrow, prior to Mahaprabhu's appearance, Advaita Acharya and Haridas Thakur were simply lamenting because whole of Navadvip was just simply full of ritualistic worshippers. They were just simply performing the Vedic rituals just for show. They were marrying animals off to each other, goats, and they were performing great functions, and they were wasting their money and valuable resource of life or time or lifespan in performing these sacrifices just simply for a little bit of sense pleasure, a bit of pratishta, a bit of pride, out of pride, just a little bit of fame, name and fame. And they had completely forgotten the purpose for which this was to be performed. And so therefore, Advaita Acharya, out of his great compassion, he then started to worship the Shaligram Shila with Ganga Jal and Tulsi leaves. And with a loud voice, he was calling out to Mahaprabhu. In fact, later on in Mahaprabhu's pastime, he says, I was peacefully sleeping in the ocean of milk. I was very peacefully sleeping there. And then you loudly called me to come here. And now what is this? So later on, Mahaprabhu always teases Advaita Acharya in this way, that you called me and now you brought me here, and now what am I doing? What are you doing here? You've made me a madman. And then he would continue his pastimes and his kirtan with his devotees. So, because, of course, one of the reasons of the Lord's descent is because of Advaita Acharya's prayers. So therefore, when we see the Lord, when we see the Panchatattva, we always pray to Advaita Acharya that, please, my dear Lord, just as you called the Lord Mahaprabhu within this world, within the material world, please, I beg you that you may also give me your mercy to assist in calling the Lord within the altar, on establishing Him within the altar of my heart. So the Lord, He appears simply on that particular point. In fact, just as the Lord appears, there's that eclipse, right? The eclipse happens. And what happens? All these people, they immediately go into the water and they start chanting Hare Krishna. But their mood is that we can only chant Hare Krishna in this particular point in time, because the eclipse is there and we want to ward off all of these negative effects. So again, they completely forgot the essence. And so Mahaprabhu taught that niyama, nakalaha, that there's no particular rule and regulation in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So the Lord appeared in that particular point in time just to deliver us fallen conditioned souls. And so what is that which we can do to offer to the Lord? Prabhupada says that one should worship the Supreme Lord by all acts and by all their results. The perfection of one's occupational duty, whether in the sphere of duty to oneself, one's community, or one's nation, is judged by the degree to which the Lord is satisfied. And the particular Yuga Dharma in this particular age is the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and the propagation of this Hare Krishna mantra throughout this material universe. And so therefore, we just simply assist Mahaprabhu in this Sankirtan movement. Everything we do must be dovetailed towards this goal, because that's what will satisfy Yagya Purush Mahaprabhu, and that's what will give us great source of enjoyment and pleasure in our Krishna consciousness. Okay, I'm over time. Thank you very much for listening. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Nithai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Pol.